name's Rhona McGraff. I'm the Welfare Reform Programme Manager at Renfrewshire Council, and I led the review of advice services, which is the subject of the impact assessment, so I was involved from that perspective. I think from the actual impact assessment, in terms of how you go about it, you need to be aware of and understand Human Rights Act implications of that. You need to understand about equality and diversity. But I think from the service point of view and the policy implications, you need to be able to have a background understanding of why there's a change in policy or there's a new policy being brought forward. Also need to have people involved who have sort of detailed understanding of how it might operate on the ground and how it would interact with the people that it's potentially going to affect. Therefore, those that work directly operationally are critical to any kind of assessment process, as well as those that are the key decision makers and are perhaps going to be taking policies to, obviously in the council's case, board. Therefore, they need to understand what the implications of that might mean, so that any mitigation measures can be introduced if they aren't already in place, and anything that's highlighted as a part of the impact assessment can then be considered and actions taken in order to address those. So the people involved need to have a broad knowledge of what the policies around and working on the ground. So a kind of fairly broad spectrum group of people needed, I think. I've carried out and gone through the council's equalities sort of training, but I was less clear on the human rights aspects, and I think that's probably where most people are sitting on it. They'll have a rough working knowledge. They may already have taken part in equality impact assessment in previous sort of guises, which I had done, but not in any detailed way. Well, again, I suppose just based it on the experience that we went through, there's quite a lot of legislation that's involved, and there's a lot of what I suppose are quite technical points, and therefore being able to support the people that are carrying out this is critical to make sure that you get the right impacts assessment and a detailed understanding of what it might mean for the relevant policy. In our case, obviously it was looking at advice services, which impacts across Renfrewshire as a whole, and therefore trying to understand at quite a granular level what that might mean. It's really important that, I suppose, in the discussions that take place beforehand and the level of support through facilitation and awareness training is really important, because it's good to get examples, and I think that was what we found most useful about it, was to have practical examples of how it might apply, and where there have been, I suppose, other organisations might have fallen foul of the relevant requirements. So it's good to see what you shouldn't do as much as how you need to consider it in a more positive way. I think, again, just from the experience that we have been through, it was really important to get quite a broad team. We had myself involved in terms of the policy lead, had officers that we were managing the service that directly provides advice from the council's perspective, and other staff who work directly with individuals in delivering advice services. So it was really important to get that different view, because I may think, yeah, we cover that, but actually when you think about what that means and how people interact at quite an operational level, you can get a different view. And I suppose it's a bit like carrying out any kind of wider risk assessment. We carry out health and safety risk assessments and things like that, and the more people you have involved, the better the result is that you're going to have, and the people with the right and relevant knowledge. So from a subject point of view, and the relevant policy and the service that's delivering it. But I think the other side of it is having experts in the human rights and equalities legislation and understand what it means and the implications. Because I think we found, as we went through the process, what does that mean and how do you interpret that? It was really good to have both and have that facilitated, and use the subject experts to be able to say, okay, that's what that might mean in practice. I think it is just having it facilitated and having people who have got the knowledge and understanding and been through it before that can actually, I suppose, calm some of the nerves around it. Because I think we did as we went through it, gets ourselves slightly bogged down at times. So you need someone that can actually say, right, step back, have another think about it, and have you thought about it in this way? And it allowed us then to consider it a bit more fully, because there's so many aspects, and it's like you feel as if there's fingers and toes grow off the major trunk of it that you have to try and keep focus. So having someone that involved with the subject matter team to help facilitate that, I think, is going to be critical. So that would be the one piece of advice.